Hello there. Tonight, we are going to travel back to a land of paper walls, cherry blossoms, and silence sharp enough to cut steel. The sun is rising over feudal Japan not as a soft glow, but as a celestial alarm clock for a society that doesn't care how tired you are. You're not waking up to your favorite playlist or a gentle phone vibration. You're waking up because someone outside is already chopping wood. A rooster has committed to its fifth encore, and your life is not your own. Because in feudal Japan, your fate is sealed before your first breath. You don't get to decide what you'll be when you grow up. That decision was made generations ago by people you'll never meet, wearing robes you'll never afford. Born into a samurai family, great, you now carry centuries of ancestral pride and enough pressure to develop a permanent stomach knot. Born a peasant. Congrats, you'll die with excellent posture from bowing too often. Born into the eta, the untouchable class. That's a whole different kind of invisibility. You matter just not enough to be spoken to in public. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really like what I do here. And if you're still awake, let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. I always love knowing who's sharing the quiet with me. Now turn off the lights, maybe turn on the fan for some soothing noise, and let's get started tonight. You are born into a role, not given, not chosen, assigned like a character in a morality play that's been running for 1,000 years. There's no audition, no dress rehearsal. The curtain rises the moment you emerge, squinting at a sky you'll never have the freedom to touch. And your costume, it's been waiting for you since your grandfather's grandfather planted his rice with fingers worn to the bone. A samurai child wakes up with expectations as crisp as the fold in their father's hakama. There are rules for how you hold your sword, how you serve your tea, how you bow to your lord without blinking like a nervous sparrow. There are rules for how to die too, but we'll get to that later, don't worry, they're very specific. A peasant child, on the other hand, wakes up under a straw roof with holes big enough to name constellations through. You've never heard of breakfast cereal, but you know how to chew on last season's pickled radish like it's a family heirloom. Your job is to work. That's not a metaphor. It's your job. You don't climb the social ladder in feudal Japan, you polish it for the people above you. And heaven forbid you show ambition. Ambition is dangerous. It suggests you think you deserve better than your ancestors, and that kind of thinking gets you remembered, briefly usually, during a public execution. Historians still debate whether people ever successfully escaped their social class, or whether the few who tried were simply forgotten before they could become cautionary tales. Even within your caste, things are layered. Let's say you're a merchant. Sounds decent, right? You make money, sell things, maybe have a nice home. Nope. In feudal Japan, profit without labor is suspicious. It smells of moral corruption and maybe imported sea salt. You're ranked below peasants. Yes, the people literally ankle deep in rice water outrank you because at least they suffer visibly. Meanwhile, the samurai are like walking pressure cookers in silk. They've got honor, sure, but it's a type of honor that keeps them awake at night, wondering if their sword is polished enough to reflect spiritual purity. You can't just be a samurai, you have to perform it, constantly. And if you slip, there are consequences. Decorative ones, sharp ones. We'll talk about seppuku over tea. And women? Oh, don't think you're exempt. In fact, you're doubly enrolled. Your gender and your class both come with manuals. If you're lucky, you get to learn calligraphy and write poetry about how the plum blossoms understand your sadness. If not, well, you just quietly obey everyone, marry who you're told, and hope no one notices that your kimono pattern is from last season. That's a real problem. No, really, it could damage your family's reputation. Fashion isn't frivolous here, it's ancestral propaganda. Let's not forget the eta, the untouchables. You might be a butcher, a leather worker, an executioner. All vital jobs, all considered spiritually dirty. You are needed but unseen. People speak around you like you're a useful ghost. And yet, You're everywhere, cleaning blood, boiling hides, sharpening the blades for executions that everyone attends, but no one mentions afterward. There's no social mobility. None. Zero. You don't marry up. You don't get discovered. You don't pull yourself up by your tabby straps and start a noodle empire. You are a nail. The higher you stick out, the harder you are hammered down. That's not just poetic. It's policy. Even your name might not belong to you entirely. It connects you to a household, a domain, a legacy. You represent your family, not yourself. Your first misstep brings shame not just to you, but to your father, your mother, and possibly your cousin 3 provinces over. There's a reason samurai families sometimes change their names after a scandal. Think of it like hitting the social reset button if the shogun lets you. There's a subtle terror in being constantly seen, and yet never allowed to be yourself. You bow, you serve, you repeat. Every gesture carries meaning. Every silence could be read as disobedience. You're not a person. You're a vessel for duty, and duty doesn't leave room for improv. So let's review. You wake up in a role. You perform it. You don't question it. If you do, you'll be corrected, probably with a wooden staff, possibly with a sword, definitely with a side of disappointment and poetic scorn. Still want to visit feudal Japan. You wouldn't last a day, not because you're weak or soft, but because you probably believe in things like personal choice breakfast or saying what's on your mind, all of which are adorable and inadvisable. And that's just the start. You haven't even left the house yet, but don't worry. In part 2, you'll get to wash your face with freezing river water while an old man judges your nail hygiene. Something to look forward to. You're up before the sun, but not because you want to be. No one in feudal Japan has the luxury of a snooze button, and even if they did, using it would be a one-way ticket to dishonor. The day begins not with birdsong or the gentle rustling of wind through paper walls, but with the thump of someone chopping wood and the cold realization that your bed, if you can call it that, did absolutely nothing for your spine. Welcome to your morning routine. There's no coffee, no shower gel, no toothbrush waiting to comfort you with minty chemicals. There is only water, icy, judgmental water, and the expectation that you'll emerge from it cleaner, holier, and somehow still dignified. You step outside to the well, the air already crisp enough to chew. Your breath fogs in the morning chill. If you're a peasant, you fetch water with your own tired hands. If you're slightly luckier, a servant in a larger household, someone might bring it to you. It's not warm. It will never be warm. Hot water is for tea and nobles, and even then, only when the fire cooperates. The basin is stone. The water slaps your skin like a teacher correcting your posture with a ruler. You splash your face, your arms, your neck. The shock is immediate and whole. Your pores scream. Your ancestors wince. But it must be done. Cleanliness in feudal Japan is not optional. It's sacred. It's spiritual. It's the only thing between you and complete social collapse. And no soap doesn't save you, unless you're part of the elite. Soap is a rare luxury. Most commoners use rice, bran ash, or nothing at all. Soap made from lye and ashes burns a little, smells worse, and somehow makes you feel less clean. Historians still debate whether the discomfort was intentional, a kind of purification through suffering. Your teeth not spared. There's no fluoride, no electric brush, humming comfortingly. There's a twig, maybe some salt. You rub it across your gums and hope the neighbors don't hear you gag. Dental care is a public concern, but not in the way you think. It's less about health, more about not embarrassing your family with halitosis during a bow. If you're a woman, the pressure increases tenfold. You are expected to smell like cherry blossoms, not sweat and survival. Your hair must be immaculate, styled in a way that requires 2 mirrors, 3 combs, and a minor engineering degree. Even peasant women strive to maintain neatness, pinning hair back with bamboo sticks or fabric strips, because unruly hair reflects an unruly spirit. And the nails, always the nails. Fingernails are small, yes, but they are social litmus tests. Clean nails mean discipline. Dirty nails mean spiritual rot. If you're a samurai, your lord might check them personally, and if he finds grime, he won't yell. He'll raise an eyebrow just slightly, and that's somehow worse. For those fortunate enough to live near a communal bathhouse, the experience is unique. The bathhouse is warm, heated by wood, and crowded by every neighbor you've ever tried to avoid. It is not a place of relaxation. It is a social ceremony wrapped in steam and nakedness. You disrobe completely, no towels, no modesty. You scrub before entering. If you bring dirt into the shared water, you might as well exile yourself. You bathe beside your boss, your father-in-law, the town elder, and the man who sells you pickled radish. Silence is expected. Awkwardness is ignored. Everyone pretends that no one is completely exposed in every possible way, and somehow this reinforces harmony. Because feudal Japan isn't about comfort, it's about cohesion, however uncomfortable. Don't live near a bathhouse, tough luck. You wash when and where you can. Streams, basins, buckets behind your hut. You make do. Rainwater is a blessing. A sudden puddle might mean a quick rinse if no one's watching. And heaven help you if someone is. Because even being seen washing improperly can damage your reputation. Children are trained in these rituals from a young age. Bathing becomes routine by the age of 5. By 10, they know the difference between ceremonial cleanliness and functional scrubbing. By adolescence, they can prepare a basin in heat water and wash without making a sound. It's not just about hygiene, it's about dignity. Let's talk clothes. You don't just throw on whatever's clean, because nothing is truly clean. Everything must be aired regularly. Smell matters, texture matters, wrinkles matter. A samurai's robe should fall with the weight of respect and the smoothness of intent. A peasant's tunic, though plain, should be neat. A woman's kimono. That's a codebook made of fabric. Every fold, every color, every pattern is a sentence, and wearing it incorrectly is like shouting at a funeral. Even undergarments have social rules. You wear certain types for work, others for ritual, and some just for seasonal changes. There are documented cases of women being shamed for wearing the wrong sash color during the harvest festival. One misstep and you're not just poorly dressed, you're spiritually out of sync. And still there's more. Your feet. Yes, your feet. They must be washed. Your sandals must be arranged properly at the entrance. If they're not aligned when someone visits, it reflects on your entire household. A crooked sandal is a crooked soul. And yes, people will absolutely judge you for it. Silently. Permanently. It's easy to romanticize all this, the grace, the ritual, the serene routine of a simpler time. But here's the truth. Cleanliness in feudal Japan wasn't about feeling fresh. It was about proving worthiness. You washed not because it felt good, but because the society you lived in believed your skin and soul were permanently under inspection. And that expectation didn't stop. You were expected to maintain composure at all times. Even during illness, grief, or backbreaking labor, a woman giving birth might still worry about how her hair is braided. A farmer with frostbite might limp to the well because an unwashed face reflects laziness. And if you fall short, the shame doesn't fade. It seeps into memory, into gossip, into history. So you clean, you wash, you groom, in summer heat, winter frost, and everything in between. And when you're done, you don't feel pampered. You feel permitted. Permitted to show your face in the world, to eat with others, to bow without internal panic. It's not self-care. It's social survival. Feudal Japan took cleanliness seriously. So seriously, in fact, that Buddhist monks would bathe more frequently than they ate solid meals. Ritual purity was central to many spiritual practices. Some temples even had designated cleansing ponds to purify the mind and body before meditation. Cold, yes. Holy, definitely. Comfortable, not even close. Modern historians debate whether these high standards of hygiene actually made feudal Japan healthier than its European counterparts. Some argue it reduced disease. Others point out that constant exposure to cold water likely contributed to chronic illnesses, but health wasn't the point, respect was. And it didn't end with humans. Homes were cleaned daily, floors swept. Tatami mats aired, shrines dusted with reverence. Even animals had their roles. Cats kept vermin away from rice stores. Dogs guarded doorways. But neither were pets. They were function in fur. So here you are, washed, brushed, inspected, and spiritually aligned, and it's still not even breakfast. You've survived the first hour of the day. That's a victory. A damp, shivering, slightly itchy victory, but it's not over. The sword waits, the fields call, the rice doesn't plant itself, but at least, your fingernails are clean. The sword gleams in the morning light, not because it's ceremonial, but because if it isn't gleaming, you might be asked why. And you won't like that conversation. You are a samurai, or at least born into the class that carries that name, and that sword strapped to your side isn't just a weapon. It's your spine, your soul, your silent resume. A dull blade is a dull man. A scuffed sheath is a scuffed reputation. There's no such thing as close enough when your honor depends on centimeters and eye contact. Being a samurai in feudal Japan sounds glamorous until you realize it's mostly high-stakes customer service. Only your customer is a daimyo with political anxiety and a low tolerance for side-eye. You are required to be brave, composed, graceful, and terrifying often at the same time. Think of it as the world's strictest job, with no days off, no promotions, and an extremely literal severance package. Let's start with Bushido, the warrior's code. It's not just a list of rules, it's a worldview, a spiritual GPS with only one direction: loyalty. You don't just serve your lord, you become his shadow. His whims are your weather, his moods are national holidays. If he sneezes, you offer him your sleeve and then consider apologizing for not doing it sooner. Disobedience, hesitation, or even the faint smell of irreverence, that's dishonor. And dishonor isn't just a bad look, it's a death sentence, politely gift-wrapped in silk. This brings us to seppuku, ritual suicide, performed with ceremony, honor, and a deeply unsettling calm. You kneel, open your robe, take the short blade your lord gives you if he's generous, and slice across your abdomen, slowly, cleanly, silently. A second, usually a trusted comrade, stands behind you to behead you once your face starts twitching. It's not murder. It's mercy. Historians still debate whether seppuku was always voluntary or often expected. But one thing's clear, it was rarely questioned. Death was just another duty. You train constantly. Swordsmanship is obvious, but that's the easy part. Archery, horseback, riding, battlefield strategy, tea ceremony, etiquette, flower arrangement, poetry. Yes, poetry all must be mastered, because being a samurai means wielding beauty and brutality with the same hand. You must write a death poem before dying. That's not optional. That's part of the code. A well-crafted farewell haiku is how you tell the world I died with grace, not just guts. Your day begins early and ends with study or silent reflection. You spar with other warriors using wooden swords that still leave bruises. You practice drawing your blade in a single fluid motion. You meditate on impermanence and balance unless your lord has errands. Then you carry scrolls and ride horses until your spine considers mutiny. And through it all, you must maintain the proper expression, composed, reserved, possibly haunted. Smiling too often is considered undignified. Laughing out loud, that's for drunks and fools. Your face must say, I am always ready for death, while your inner voice whispers, please don't spill the tea again in front of Lord Tanaka. Speaking of tea, yes, the ceremony is sacred. It is not a casual sip and slurp. It is a dance of fingers, glances, and the hierarchy. Pour the tea too fast, insult. Lift the cup incorrectly, insult. Speak before spoken to. You guessed it, insult. You must sit in seiza, kneeling position, for what feels like centuries, even as your legs go numb and your brain begs for mercy. But you remain still, because movement is weakness. And weakness is unacceptable. Weapons are kept spotless. A stained blade reflects a stained soul. You polish your sword daily, not because it's dirty, but because you must be seen doing it. Visibility is everything. You must be honorable, but more importantly, you must appear honorable. Your armor is inspected. Your robes are folded just so. Your sandals must not squeak. Yes, that's a real concern. A squeaky sandal in the shogun's court could ruin you faster than a missed bow. Your position isn't secure. Samurai aren't kings, they serve. Always. You are middle management with a katana. If your daimyo dies, your job might die with him. You might be ordered to commit junshi, ritual suicide, to accompany your lord into the afterlife. Some samurai volunteered, others hesitated, and in that hesitation was shame that could span generations. Your death was expected to match your life silent, dutiful, poetic. And don't think your peers are your friends. Samurai are political tools, and politics in feudal Japan are a chessboard of poison tea, silent resentment, and family alliances that make soap operas look like friendly picnics. One wrong move, one misplaced comment, one cousin marrying the wrong person, and suddenly your family's entire honor is up for debate. Even your dreams are regulated. You don't aspire to wealth, love, or leisure, you aspire to service. That's it. Your greatest hope is to be remembered as obedient, disciplined, and dead at the right time. If you're lucky, you die in battle. If not, you might spend your last years guarding a bridge in the rain or teaching spoiled noble children how to fold a kimono with dignity. Romance practically non-existent. Marriages are arranged by your elders. Your bride is chosen for her lineage, not her laugh. You might have a concubine, but affection is rare, and emotional openness rarer still. Crying is for the dying, maybe. Passion is considered dangerous. The only acceptable feelings are respect, and a mild form of melancholy that pairs well with dusk. A samurai's family life is quiet, structured, and occasionally tragic. Children are raised with reverence for ancestors and fear of shame. Sons are taught to die well. Daughters are taught to marry well. Both are taught not to question anything too loudly. Your enemies. Other samurai. Bandits. Poorly worded haiku. A duel could begin over a glance, or an overheard insult, or a sandal left out of alignment, and you cannot decline a duel. That would be cowardice, worse than death. So you fight, often at dawn, silent, formal, and final. And yet, despite all this, despite the suffocating rules, the constant scrutiny, and the ever-present shadow of death, you still cling to pride. You are a samurai. You walk with purpose. You kneel with grace. You are feared and respected. Children bow to you, merchants move aside, farmers glance away. You represent the warrior ideal, even if your soul is tired and your thighs haven't felt circulation since the last tea ceremony. Historians still debate whether the life of a samurai was truly noble or just rigidly performative. Some call it the pinnacle of disciplined living. Others see it as a gilded cage where beauty, loyalty, and art mask the quiet desperation of men afraid to laugh at the wrong joke. But one thing is certain, it wasn't easy. You don't get to rest. You don't get to question. You don't get to shrug and say, maybe tomorrow. And you, dear listener, would not last a day, because you might forget to bow, or smile too soon, or step through the wrong door with the wrong foot, or ask, why is everyone so quiet? And just like that, you'd be corrected. Quietly, elegantly, permanently. If you're not born into the samurai class, you don't get a sword. You don't get poetry. You don't get tea ceremonies or silk robes or the questionable privilege of writing a death poem. What you do get is mud. You get rice. You get a lot of crouching and a lifetime of back pain that starts in childhood and ends, well, it doesn't end really. It just becomes part of who you are. You are a peasant in feudal Japan, and that's not a title. It's a sentence. Your day begins before the sun, not metaphorically, literally. You wake up in the dark because the sun hasn't punched in yet, and neither have you. Your home, if it can be called, that is a hut made of wood thatch and a generous helping of hope. There are no windows, just slits for air. The floor is hard-packed dirt. And privacy. That's for nobles and people who don't live with 6 other relatives and a goat that doesn't understand boundaries. Your futon is thin, your blanket is thinner, and your body hurts because you went to bed sore and woke up sore and will go to sleep sore again. One day your spine will simply give up and fold like an origami frog, but not today. Today you've got rice to tend. First you stretch, which is generous. We'll call it a stretch, but it's more like a groan that includes some arm flailing. Then you eat. Breakfast is humble. Maybe a bowl of rice porridge if last year's harvest wasn't a disaster. Maybe some pickled something. Or if times are hard, you just chew slowly and pretend your mouth is full. Hunger is a loyal friend here. It shows up every morning and stays all day. And then you head to the fields. Rice fields are not as romantic as they look in travel documentaries. They are swampy, ankle-deep mud pits designed by the gods specifically to test the limits of human endurance. You spend 12 hours planting, weeding, and praying the weather behaves. Your knees are always wet. Your back is always bent. You hope the ox doesn't wander off. You hope the bandits don't show up. You hope the samurai don't ride through and trample your crop because they're practicing flanking maneuvers. Yes, that happens. You don't own the land. You don't even rent it, in the modern sense. You're allowed to work it. You grow rice for your lord. Your taxes are paid in rice. Your debt is measured in rice. Your family eats whatever's left, if there's any left. And if the harvest is bad, you starve. If it's good, you still might starve because the tax doesn't care about the weather. It's fixed. Generous samurai might grant leniency. Most don't. Compassion is not a popular leadership trait. Want to complain? That's adorable. Speaking out gets you whipped, fined, or worse, elevated to corpse. The village headman might listen, but he answers to the local samurai. And the samurai, they answer to the daimyo. And the daimyo, he's too busy admiring his sword collection to care about your soggy field. Your only real break comes during festivals. Brief flashes of communal joy in an otherwise grey routine. You drink sake, dance in a circle, wear masks that smell like storage, and forget for a moment that planting season starts again in 4 days. It's not a vacation. It's a pause in the suffering. And even then you still might be drafted to help with ceremonial cleaning. Let's not forget your home life. When the day ends, you return to your hut, muddy, exhausted, and possibly missing a shoe. Inside, your wife or mother is cooking something that smells like turnips, because it is turnips. If you're lucky, there's miso soup. If you're really lucky, there's a fish. But most nights it's rice again. Maybe barley, pretending to be rice if things are tight. You eat in silence. Not because you're sad, although let's be honest, but because loudness is considered rude. Everything is formal even when your ribs are visible. You thank the gods, your ancestors, and your landlord before you touch a bowl. And if the food is bad, you still say it's good. Because if your wife worked all day to prepare it, the least you can do is pretend you're not chewing disappointment. You raise children the same way you were raised, with love, yes, but also with discipline that would terrify a modern parenting forum. Boys are expected to help in the fields by age 6. Girls help cook, sew, and haul water. No one gets a free ride. If your child survives past age 5, that's a small miracle. If they survive to adulthood, that's a blessing. If they live long enough to complain about how their rice is cooked, that's a luxury. Your clothing is plain, cotton undyed, sometimes patched with other clothes that died in service. You have 1 pair of sandals, maybe 2 if you married well. You don't worry about fashion because you don't have the time. You wear what doesn't itch and what won't fall apart mid-squat. At night, you remove your outer robe, fold it neatly, and use it as a pillow. This is normal. The seasons shape everything. In spring, you plant. In summer, you weed. In fall, you harvest. In winter, you pray the roof doesn't cave in from snow. There's no insulation, just layers and body heat. Fires are small, controlled, and often inadequate. If your child gets frostbite, you wrap their feet in straw and tell them stories about warmer days. If your grandmother dies in her sleep, you thank the gods she didn't suffer. You don't travel. You're not allowed to leave your village without permission. And even if you could, where would you go? The roads are dangerous. The forests are haunted. The mountains are steep and mostly just metaphors for hardship. Your world is small. Your future, smaller still. Historians still debate whether peasants in feudal Japan were truly oppressed or simply endured a natural order. Some argue they found contentment in routine. Others suggest that contentment is what you call exhaustion when rebellion feels pointless. But even within this struggle, there's beauty. The rice fields glow in the morning light. The village festivals shimmer with color and laughter. The stories passed down around the fire contain magic heroes, lessons, and dreams. You might not own much, but you own those. And sometimes on a good night, that's enough. Still, you wouldn't last a day. You'd wake up late. You'd refuse to eat pickled radish. You'd try to stretch and hit your head on the rafters. You'd ask, why don't we take a day off? And everyone would stare at you like you'd asked why the sky is shy. And then you'd go to the field. You'd step into the mud. You'd try to plant rice. Your knees would shake. Your back would scream. A bug would land on your face and refuse to leave. And you'd realize deep in your bones that this is life. No shortcuts, no upgrades. Just rice and mud and time. It's finally mealtime. Not the kind of mealtime where you scroll your phone while waiting for delivery. This isn't takeout. It's not even a picnic. It's survival, quiet, ritualistic, and just barely filling. You've worked all morning, whether in the fields or cleaning your sword or folding 12 layers of layered symbolism into your spouse's kimono, and now your stomach is a hollow drum. Your hands are still caked in rice water or soot or the residual aches of generational expectation. You want food, you need food, but in feudal Japan, eating isn't about indulgence, it's about restraint. And rice, so much rice. If you're a peasant, rice is your breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Not fancy steaming white rice like you'd see in an ad. This rice has personality. It's sticky, maybe a little yellowed, sometimes bulked up with barley or millet because the taxes took the good stuff. On a good day, you'll have miso soup, which is usually more salt than soup, and a side of pickled vegetables that range in flavor from surprisingly tangy to did that used to be a turnip. You eat in silence in the corner of your hut, sitting on your heels or cross-legged if your knees still work. The bowl is warm, which helps, and you hold it with 2 hands, not just for politeness, but because warmth is currency. If you're lucky, there's something fermented. If you're really lucky, there's something crunchy. If you're unlucky, the crunchy thing might not be food. Fish possible. Dried salted, usually sharp enough to file your teeth. Meat. That's rare and reserved. Maybe a scrap here and there or a bird that fell from a tree, and no one asked too many questions. Protein is not a guarantee. If you're a woman, you serve everyone else first. If you're the child, you eat last. If you're the father, you pretend the soup is hot even when it's clearly not. Now, if you're a samurai, meals are better. Technically, you have access to more variety, seasonal produce, cold noodles in summer, maybe tofu or grilled fish, even the occasional delicacy if your lord is feeling generous. But here's the catch, you don't eat first, you eat last. First your lord eats, then his guests, then his advisors, then whoever happens to be standing around and looks important. Eventually, when the mood is right and the ceremonial poetry has been read and no one has insulted the rice by chewing too loudly, you eat. What's left might be cold, the soup tepid, the rice congealed into a shape that defies geometry. But you say nothing. You bow. You thank the kitchen. You act honored because even leftovers from a daimyo's table are considered a privilege. Speaking up would be disrespectful. Complaining would be catastrophic. And even though the samurai class has a better diet, that doesn't mean it's exciting. Meals are small, often bland, and deeply seasonal. Not in the cute, trendy, farm-to-table way. More like there is no table and the farm has snow on it. You eat what grows. And if nothing grows, you don't eat. There's no refrigeration, no preservatives, no imported tropical fruits. Winter is a polite suggestion to fast. You might have pickled items or dried seaweed or roots you buried in the fall and hope haven't fermented into poison. You learn to chew slowly, to appreciate texture, to lie convincingly when your mother-in-law asks if the turnip stew is too watery. And if you do get sick, well, good luck. Food poisoning is not a brief inconvenience, it's a crisis. There's no Pepto, no urgent care, no calls to a doctor. The village remedy is usually lie down and think about your ancestors. You'll either get better or become one. If you steal food, even a bowl of rice, the punishment is severe. Not a slap on the wrist, a public humiliation. A beating, possibly death. Rice isn't just a meal. It's currency, it's tax, it's your life. So don't touch what isn't yours, especially if it belongs to the daimyo. Now let's talk tea. It's not what you think. You're picturing a cozy cup steam curling gently, maybe a biscuit on the side. No. Tea in feudal Japan is a spiritual obstacle course disguised as hospitality. The chanoyu, or tea ceremony, is a deeply codified ritual. It's not about quenching thirst, it's about demonstrating discipline, aesthetic awareness, and your place in the universe. You don't sip, you don't slurp, you turn the cup twice, you bow, you express humble gratitude with a voice so low it's almost a whisper. You drink, you bow again. You pretend the tea, which is often bitter powdered matcha, is the best thing you've ever consumed, even if it tastes like steamed spinach and self-denial. One misplaced movement can be interpreted as disrespect. One poorly timed expression of joy might imply you're too comfortable. And comfort in feudal Japan is suspicious. Historians still debate the deeper political function of the tea ceremony, whether it was an actual spiritual practice, or just an elaborate way for samurai to remind everyone who was in charge, using hot water and nerves of steel. Back in the peasant village, the rules are simpler but no less strict. Meals are quiet, reverent. You don't talk with your mouth full, you don't talk much at all. Jokes are rare. Food is too precious. You thank your ancestors for the rice. You thank the gods for not sending locusts. You thank your neighbor for not stealing your pickles this year. And what about children? They eat what you eat. They learn early to be grateful, to chew politely, to not ask why the soup smells like boiled shoe. Meals are a time of reflection, not relaxation. Your eldest son might be training to one day manage a plot of land. Your daughter might already know how to serve tea without being seen. The table is where they practice their future roles, silently, obediently, while chewing barley. In wealthier households, presentation matters. Food is arranged beautifully, even sparingly. A single plum, a sprig of something green, the bowl matters as much as its contents. Colors are symbolic. Placement is symbolic. Everything is symbolic. You can't just throw food on a plate and call it done. That would be culinary blasphemy. And still, most meals end the same with a quiet sigh. Not from satisfaction, but from the relief of having anything to eat. You might fantasize about variety. But variety is dangerous. Exotic foods are rare and expensive. Miso might be mixed with unexpected things. Pickles might be fermented in ways that raise questions science has yet to answer. But you eat them anyway, because hunger is the one universal truth regardless of caste. So you've eaten. You've slurped respectfully. You've folded your napkin, not that you had one. You've survived another meal without saying the wrong thing, reaching across the wrong bowl, or chewing too loud. Congratulations. Now it's time to clean up. No dishwashers, no soap, just water cloth and the firm belief that dishes reflect the state of your soul. You rinse your bowl. You stack everything just so. And then with your stomach vaguely satisfied and your back still aching, you rise. Not with joy, not with excitement. Just with the knowledge that dinner comes again in about 8 hours, and if you're lucky, there'll be one more radish on the plate. So no, you wouldn't last a day. Because at some point, you'd laugh at the wrong moment, or groan when the soup turns out to be mostly broth and leaves again, or ask if anyone has any soy sauce like you're at a sushi bar in 2025. And everyone would pause, and someone quietly would slide your bowl away, and that would be the end of that meal. Let's say someone at your meal said something completely ridiculous like, I think the daimyo's new robe makes him look a little pudgy. You'd freeze. Everyone would. Chopsticks in midair. rice grains trembling. Because in feudal Japan, a joke is never just a joke. It's a statement, a risk, sometimes a weapon. And speaking out of turn, that's not just rude, it's dangerous. Speech here is like a finely balanced katana, beautiful but deadly if mishandled. Every word you say carries weight, every silence speaks volumes, and if you happen to say the wrong thing at the wrong time to the wrong person, well, let's just say you'll wish the earth would politely swallow you. Free speech. That's adorable. In this society, your opinion is not a right. It's a liability, and expressing it, a potential form of social suicide. Say you're a merchant. You overhear two samurai debating whether a certain scroll is authentic. You happen to know it's a forgery. You've seen the artist's work. Maybe you even helped sell the original once. Do you speak up? Of course not. You smile, nod, and excuse yourself to go check on the salted plums. Correcting someone above your class, especially a samurai, is like lighting a match in a barn full of fireworks. Just don't. Even within your own family hierarchy rules the tongue. Sons don't contradict fathers. Wives don't correct husbands. Younger siblings speak only when addressed. And even then, you choose your words the way a monk arranges rocks in a garden, cautiously, reverently, and with a deep fear of metaphysical imbalance. And apologies. Oh, they're not quick. You don't just mumble sorry and move on. Apologizing in feudal Japan is performance art. It might involve writing a formal letter bowing so deeply your forehead touches the floor, or sending a gift, perhaps a comb or a live bird or something symbolic and humble. If the offense is severe, you might even compose a poem of shame, delicately balanced in metaphor nature and seasonal references. Too casual, and you've insulted them twice. Too formal, and it seems insincere. Too clever, and now you're just showing off, which is another kind of offense entirely. It's an emotional tightrope walked in tabby socks. And if you've really messed up, like, really, there's a chance you'll be asked to atone more, dramatically. Perhaps a public apology at the village square. Perhaps ritual exile. Perhaps something that involves someone sharpening a very clean sword in a very quiet room. No one says it out loud, but everyone knows the consequences of being perceived as impudent. It's a public ritual without the benefit of closure. Now, let's imagine you're a samurai. Your life is bound by Bushido, but your tongue bound by tradition protocol, and the eternal fear of appearing less refined than your peers. You learn to speak in measured tones, never too loud, never too emotional. A raised voice is unbecoming. A complaint is weakness. A sharp tongue is worse than a dull blade because it implies a lack of control. And control above all is sacred. Historians still debate whether this culture of extreme verbal restraint was a form of social harmony or suppression. Did it foster stability? Maybe. Did it also suppress individuality? Almost certainly. But either way, it worked. The silence of feudal Japan wasn't emptiness, it was orchestration. Even humor had rules. You could laugh, yes, but gently, modestly, and never at your superior's expense. If a daimyo tells a terrible haiku that accidentally compares his wife to a muddy rice field, you smile, maybe chuckle softly. You do not let out a belly laugh, no matter how badly your lungs want to. Because that sound might echo, and echoes have consequences. There are stories of samurai being reassigned exile to distant cold provinces because they were overheard laughing with a lord instead of at a respectful distance. Laughing too much could suggest familiarity. And familiarity is an insult when there's 20 layers of rank between you and the person holding the purse strings or the sword hilt. Even among friends, words are delicate. There's no teasing without hierarchy, no sarcasm without risk. You say what is expected when it is expected and how it is expected. Every conversation is a dance, and one misstep could end with you sleeping in a shed, or worse. This is why many choose to say nothing. Silence in feudal Japan is the default. It is safer. It is more respectful. It can never be quoted against you in a court of law or at the family dinner table. Some people go their whole lives without saying more than a few necessary sentences to anyone outside their immediate household. Silence is a form of armor. It's the most socially acceptable way to exist. And yet when words are used, really used, they carry immense power. A perfectly delivered phrase, a well-placed compliment, a poem left anonymously at a shrine. These small verbal acts can move mountains, because when speech is rare, it's precious, like hearing your name whispered in a temple or finding a fresh blossom on your doorstep. Some learn to weaponize this. Court advisors and political strategists use layered compliments and coded language to influence daimyos' twist decisions or destroy rivals without ever raising their voices. They spoke in riddles, metaphors, or seasonal imagery. The plum tree blooms early this year might actually mean your nephew is planning to betray you at next month's tea banquet. There's power in being understood by only those who matter. For those outside the noble class, this linguistic labyrinth can feel exclusionary. But even villagers have their own systems. Gossip, for instance, is a quiet art, spoken over pickling barrels or while hanging laundry. No names, just hints. Just enough to shift a reputation like wind through rice stalks. And if you're thinking, well, I'd just be honest, then I regret to inform you, you wouldn't last an afternoon. You'd correct someone's story, you'd challenge a harmless lie, you'd offer your opinion during a family meal, and suddenly people would stop making eye contact. Invitations would vanish. You'd become invisible not physically, but socially. You'd be there, but erased. And no one would tell you why. They wouldn't need to. You'd feel it in the silence. So no, this world isn't built for directness. It's built for nuance, for careful placement of syllables, for saying everything and nothing at the same time. You'd try to make a joke, and it would land like a brick on a tatami mat. You'd try to apologize, and someone would hand you a brush and paper and ask you to express your sorrow in seasonally appropriate metaphor. You'd ask, wait, what did I do wrong? And they'd say nothing. Because in feudal Japan, if you don't know, that's part of the lesson. You're dressed. You've survived the bath, the breakfast, and the awkward silence over your failed attempt at humor. Now it's time to face the world. But not so fast. What you wear in feudal Japan isn't just a matter of comfort or taste. It's a declaration, a uniform, a daily reminder to everyone, including yourself, of exactly where you belong. Clothing here doesn't express your personality. It expresses your rank, your function, and your ability to follow rules without thinking too hard. Your sleeves tell people if they should bow to you. Your hairline might determine whether you're allowed inside a particular building. This is fashion as social order, and trust me, no one is walking around in a statement hoodie. Let's begin at the top, literally. The samurai. Their wardrobes are dignified, layered, and designed to say one thing: I have killed a man for less than that fashion faux pas you're wearing. Robes in deep muted tones, indigo, earth brown, charcoal gray. Occasionally a touch of crimson, just enough to hint that you own a sword and know how to use it. Everything is precise, folded in ritualistic symmetry. You don't just wear a hakama, you become it. If the pleats are off, if the layers misalign, you might as well arrive naked. Of course, the most eye-catching part is the daisho, the matched pair of swords, a katana and a wakizashi. These aren't accessories, they're a walking resume. Worn at the waist, the daisho tells everyone around you that you are a warrior legally sanctioned to kill if provoked, especially if someone steps on your hem. If. And yet the swords are rarely drawn. In fact, drawing them casually in public is forbidden. You only unsheath if absolutely necessary. Otherwise, you risk being corrected with a louder sword. And you'd be amazed how many swords are within earshot. Samurai hair, tied in the shonmeiji, that infamous top knot often shaved in the front. It isn't just about style, it's about practicality for helmet wearing and status. The tighter the knot, the tighter the discipline. A messy shonmeiji says this man is either recently disgraced or very recently drunk. Neither is ideal. Next down the ladder, we find the artisans and merchants. Artisans wear durable, practical garments, cotton mostly in quiet tones, slate tan, dusty blue. They need to move, carry tools, kneel, hammer, and scrub. Their sleeves are often tied back. Their hems are short to avoid fire's clay ink or whatever they spend 12 hours a day creating with their bare, underappreciated hands. Merchants, though technically lower in the Confucian hierarchy, often have more money, and money wants to be seen even if only a little, so their robes are better tailored, finer cotton, sometimes even silk linings, but they must tread carefully. Too much flair, and they risk attracting the attention of bored samurai or tax collectors. So they've mastered the art of subtle wealth, a plain robe with an unusually perfect dye, a sash that's a little too well tied, a walking stick that might just be ivory if you squint. Peasants. Different game entirely. You wear what works. Cotton, if you're lucky hemp. If you're realistic, patched and repurposed always. The color palette is strictly mud compatible, beige, brown, the occasional faded green. Not because you want to blend in with the field, but because you are the field. Your robe says, yes, I work in dirt. No, I cannot afford dye. Yes, these are my only shoes. Shoes are a whole issue. Straw sandals, waraji are standard. They last a few weeks. Maybe. If you're a farmer, you learn to braid new ones as a survival skill, and if it rains, tough luck. Hope your toes enjoy the sensation of cold mud sliding between shame and inevitability. Children wear what their parents can patch. There's no such thing as growing into it. You're lucky to have something that doesn't drag in the dirt or fall off your shoulder. If your sleeves are tied with string and your sandals flap when you walk, congratulations, you're ready for first grade. Now women's clothing. Take a breath. This is where the social anxiety reaches its peak. A woman's kimono is not just a dress, it's an event. A seasonally coded, hierarchically structured, emotionally loaded expression of grace, obedience, and whether or not her family is doing well financially. There are rules, so many rules. Patterns must match the season. You don't wear cherry blossoms in autumn. You don't wear maple leaves in spring. Your obi, the wide belt, must be tied properly, not too tight, not too elaborate. Your hair should be styled according to your age and marital status. A young unmarried woman might wear her hair long and flowing, adorned with floral pins. A married woman keeps it neat, understated, and out of the way. If your bun leans too far left, your neighbor will notice, and she will tell your mother-in-law. You wear layers, sometimes up to 12, not because it's cold, but because that's what refinement demands. Each layer coordinated, each color symbolizing something: purity, patience, family pride, restraint. The entire ensemble weighs more than a small child, and you're expected to glide like you're floating on rice paper. And if you wear the wrong combination, if your hem trails inappropriately or your collar dips too low, that's not just a fashion error, it's a moral failing. One woman's sash scandal could ripple through a village like a bad harvest. Historians still debate whether these clothing customs offered women a form of expressive power or simply boxed them into even more elaborate prisons. But either way, the consequences were real. A girl seen in inappropriate attire might lose a marriage proposal. A samurai wife who dressed too extravagantly could bring shame on her husband's entire household, and shame, as we know, is not easily washed out of silk. Even the dye matters. Purple reserved for nobility. Only the wealthy could afford the rare pigments. If a commoner wore purple either through theft accident or a dye that looked purple in the wrong light, well, let's just say someone might come knocking. With a fine. Or a sword. Let's not forget the Hinin and Eta, the so-called untouchables. Their clothing is another mark of separation, often drab, often filthy, sometimes forcibly marked. They clean the streets, butcher the animals, handle the dead. Society needs them, but never forgets to remind them they are not part of it. And so as you walk through the town square or down a mountain path, your outfit precedes you. You are your sleeves, your sash, your sandals. People bow or don't based on thread count and crease alignment. There's no freedom of expression here. There is only correct expression. To be underdressed is dishonor. To be overdressed is arrogance. To be creative is suspicious. So let's imagine you've just arrived from the modern world. You step into a village wearing jeans, a t-shirt with a sarcastic slogan, and mismatched socks. Within 10 seconds, a child will point. An elder will cough disapprovingly. A merchant will lower his prices, assuming you're cursed. And a samurai might ask what clan you serve while casually resting his hand on the hilt of his blade. You'd be corrected. Kindly perhaps, or publicly, but definitely corrected. Because in feudal Japan, clothing isn't personal, it's political, it's spiritual, it's social, GPS, with very sharp recalibration systems. And if you still don't get it, if you show up to a spring festival in an autumn pattern, if your sleeves are too long for your rank, if your sandals squeak in the palace, you won't last a day, not because anyone will say something, but because they won't have to. You'll feel it in every stare, every whisper, every bow that's just a little too shallow. And you'll wish you'd just worn beige. You might have seen the woodblock prints, the ones with the moonlight shining on a quiet bridge, a lone couple standing beneath a flowering cherry tree, heads tilted just slightly together, like a secret is being passed between them. It looks romantic, right? It whispers of subtle glances, stolen touches, silent affection, wrapped in silk and poetry. Forget all that. In feudal Japan, love is not your business. Marriage is not a journey of the heart. It's a transaction, a duty, an obligation to your family, your clan, and the hierarchy of heaven itself. Falling in love with someone. That's fine in a play. In real life, it's inconvenient at best and punishable at worst. Let's start at the bottom. If you're a peasant, your marriage is arranged by your parents with the enthusiastic input of your village elder and possibly your neighbor who once traded cucumbers with your mother. Romantic compatibility isn't even discussed. The most important factor is strong legs for fieldwork, healthy teeth, and a history of not dying too easily. You meet your future spouse on the morning of your betrothal, maybe the day before if your families are progressive. You bow, you nod, maybe you smile if no one's looking. Then you start planning a wedding that will include rice ritual and awkwardly standing next to someone you're expected to share your entire life with. Love may come later, or it may not. Either way, it's not required. You raise children, you tend land, you nod politely at each other over miso soup. If you're lucky, your spouse laughs at your jokes quietly. If you're unlucky, your spouse laughs at your jokes loudly, and then everyone has a problem. For women especially, marriage is the end of autonomy, what little there was to begin with. You move into your husband's family home. You care for his parents, serve his meals, bear his children. Your opinion, if asked, should be modest, and your emotions should be folded into your sleeves like the spare handkerchief you're not allowed to actually use. If you're from a samurai family, things are even more formal. Marriage is a political strategy. Your hand in marriage is a chess piece used to secure alliances, pay off grudges, or cement loyalties between clans. You might be married off at 15. Your husband could be twice your age or your cousin. Either way, you bow, you obey. You wear your finest kimono and recite your lines with a voice that doesn't tremble too much. You're trained in etiquette, calligraphy, embroidery, and the art of smiling, while your soul quietly retreats into a corner. You're not just expected to obey, you're expected to do it beautifully. You pour tea like it's a prayer. You walk like a poem. And no, you don't get to fall in love with the flute teacher. Even if he writes you haiku and smells like plum blossoms, love letters, maybe. If they're written in perfect seasonal metaphors using the correct type of paper delivered by a maid who pretends she doesn't understand what's going on. Courtship, if it exists, is cloaked in formality. You don't say, I love you. You say the moon this season reminds me of your presence. And then you wait days, maybe weeks, for a reply that might be equally cryptic. Historians still debate whether these hidden romances were common or rare. Some believe they were frequent but unspoken, passed down in family gossip and village whispers. Others think the emotional landscape was just as tightly regulated as everything else, because in a world where every action is judged, vulnerability is dangerous. And it was dangerous. Adultery, especially for women, was a serious offense. If you were caught, exile, disgrace, maybe even death. And not just for you. Your entire family could suffer. The shame would seep into your lineage, affecting your children, your siblings, your ancestors waiting politely in the afterlife. Men had a little more leeway. Samurai could take concubines, merchants too if they were wealthy. But even then it wasn't about love. It was about lineage, legacy, sometimes lust, but rarely affection. Your wife might pretend not to notice. She might even be expected to help manage the household of her husband's additional companions. Silent suffering was considered a virtue. And what about the people who never married? That's complicated. Women who remained unmarried were often viewed with suspicion. Why hadn't they secured a match? Were they flawed, cursed, or just unlucky? Some became Buddhist nuns living lives of service and reflection. Others stayed with family taking on domestic roles and trying not to make eye contact during festivals. Men who didn't marry were often assumed to be poor, sickly, or cursed with a bad temper. They could still have a place in society, especially as craftsmen or monks, but they'd forever be seen as incomplete. A man without a wife was a tree with no roots, a woman without a husband, a vase with no flowers. Beautiful maybe, but missing something vital. Same-sex relationships also complicated. Among samurai there were instances of wakashudo, a form of romantic and often sexual relationship between older warriors and their younger apprentices. These were accepted within certain boundaries so long as they didn't interfere with duty or family obligations. But they weren't considered a replacement for marriage. At the end of the day, legacy mattered. Children mattered. Appearances mattered most of all. So let's say you're someone who feels things deeply. You believe in soulmates. You read too many romance novels, though in feudal Japan they'd be scrolls. You see someone at the festival. You lock eyes, fireworks, but she's promised to the blacksmith's son. And you're just a rice tax clerk with dreams. You write her a poem. She writes one back. You meet under a plum tree. You talk for 10 minutes. You almost hold hands. And then, nothing. Because to pursue this love would mean ruin. For her, for you, for everyone related to you. So you do what people here have done for centuries. You tuck the poem into your sleeve. You marry someone chosen for you. You learn to love their laugh, or maybe just the way they don't mind your snoring. You raise children. You tend your house. You pass the tree where you almost held hands and you don't look back. This is how love works in feudal Japan. Quietly, carefully, often unspoken, sometimes impossible. And you, with your romantic ideals and your big Western ideas about following your heart, you wouldn't last a day. Because you confess your feelings, you'd ask to choose your partner. You'd tell your parents, but I love them, and they'd look at you like you just asked if you could marry your reflection. And then they'd make arrangements for someone else. And you'd realize that in this world, love isn't forbidden. It's just inconvenient. Death in feudal Japan isn't some distant concept floating in the far-off future like retirement or a beach house. It's immediate, intimate, always nearby. You wake up with it, walk past it, bow to it, sometimes invite it in for tea. It's not necessarily feared, but it is always expected. In this world, you don't plan for old age. You plan for your exit. If you're a samurai, you don't just imagine death, you rehearse it. Over and over again. You've composed your death poem by the time you're 14. You've practiced your final bow. You've trained your hands to hold the short blade with grace, even when your stomach is twisted with shame. Seppuku isn't a tragic accident or a desperate act. It's protocol. It's dignity with bloodstains. Samurai are raised to believe that an honorable death is better than a dishonorable life. Lose a duel, make a mistake. Displease your lord, your options narrow, your shame grows heavy. And eventually someone might slide you a dagger and a mat and say quietly, "You know what to do." And you do. There are witnesses. a second who beheads you to spare you the worst of it. But only after you've started the ritual yourself, because courage must be proven first. Honor demands pain, and then silence. No screaming, no begging. You die like you live, composed, poised, and terribly, terribly still. But what if you're not a samurai? What if you're a peasant? Well, then death comes in different forms. Slower, but just as brutal. It might be a bad harvest. Too little rain. Too much rain. A rogue horse trampling your rice field. You don't have insurance. You don't even have boots. So when the rice dies, your family dies with it slowly, quietly, with dignity that no one will remember. Or it might be disease. A fever that doesn't break. A cough that gets deeper. You don't call a doctor. There isn't one. Maybe a local healer, maybe a grandmother, with knowledge of herbs and poultices. But if that doesn't work, you lie down, you sweat, you pray. You hope you've done enough good in this life to be reincarnated as something better in the next, maybe a turtle. Bandits are another threat. They don't care that you spent all year growing daikon radishes. They want food, or money, or your daughter. If you resist, they kill you. If you don't, they kill you slower. The road outside your village isn't a path. It's a gamble. And most people only travel when absolutely necessary. Even then, they travel in groups with lucky charms tucked inside their robes, muttering prayers between every step. If you're a woman, death might come during childbirth. Medical options are limited. There are midwives, yes, and birth rituals and talismans to hang above your futon. But if something goes wrong, and it often does, you die. And your baby might too. If your husband dies in disgrace, you might be expected to follow him into death. Not emotionally. Literally, with a dagger, to prove your loyalty, to erase the shame. Natural disasters aren't rare, they're regular guests. Earthquakes can flatten entire villages without warning. Floods can wipe out your crops, your home, your livestock, and your plans. Tsunamis don't knock, they just take. A storm rolls in from the coast and suddenly your hut is a memory. There's a story of a village in the shadow of a volcano. The locals didn't flee when the mountain rumbled. They prayed. They lit incense. They fed the spirits. The lava still came. And they still bowed to it. Because in feudal Japan, death isn't a villain. It's a neighbor, a co-worker, a roommate who never pays rent but is always there. Even execution is a form of art here. Criminals, those who steal rice, break laws, or offend the wrong person, are often punished publicly. Heads on display, bodies buried far from the village. A message, not just a sentence. Sometimes the executioners themselves come from the Ede Eta class, the untouchables. They are needed, they are feared, they are never invited to dinner. Funerals are formal, solemn, and full of ritual. The body is washed, dressed in white, placed in a wooden box. Offerings are made, coins, rice, incense, sometimes personal items. The dead are not simply mourned, they are prepared. Their journey continues. And everyone left behind pretends not to be afraid. Buddhism offers some comfort. Death is a passage. Suffering is part of life. Karma is a ledger that follows you. Shintoism too plays its role. Spirits everywhere, rituals to purify respect for the ancestors who now watch from shrines and family altars. You don't say goodbye. You say we'll see you again. Children learn early. They attend ceremonies, they sweep graves, they hear stories about grandfathers who died with honor and grandmothers who died in childbirth but never once complained. There's no hiding it. Death is part of education. Even nature joins the lesson. That cherry blossom that fell too soon, a reminder. The crow on the rooftop, a signal. The gust of wind during a prayer, possibly someone saying hello or goodbye. You don't cry loudly. That's disrespectful. You don't make a scene. That's selfish. You keep your grief folded inside you like the letter you didn't get to send. You offer rice to the shrine. You burn incense. You remember. And if you're lucky, if you die in your sleep in your home surrounded by people who bow deeply, you are honored. Not with songs or statues, but with silence. With memory, with a bowl of soup placed at your altar on the right days every year until your great-grandchild forgets. Historians still debate whether this culture of death made people more resilient or more resigned. Did it teach emotional maturity or just emotional suppression? Was it spiritual wisdom or simply necessity dressed in robes and ritual? No matter the answer, the result is the same. You live your life with death nearby, not stalking, just waiting, politely. And you wouldn't last a day. You'd flinch at the first funeral. You'd ask too many questions. You'd suggest getting a second opinion or wonder aloud if maybe the storm shelter should be upgraded. And everyone would look at you with quiet confusion, because in this world, death isn't a problem to solve. It's a season to endure, a silence to respect, and a story that ends whether you're ready or not. You've made it this far, congratulations. You've avoided public disgrace, survived your meals without offending a daikon, managed to keep your sleeves in check, and resisted the urge to fall in love with the wrong person. But before you get too confident, there's something else you need to understand, something deeper, more permanent, and infinitely more suffocating: your clan. In feudal Japan, the concept of self isn't individual, it's inherited, it's collective. You are not you. You are your family, your household, your ancestry, and your future, all bundled together like a scroll tied in red silk. You don't get to live your truth. You live the truth, the one your ancestors wrote for you with blood rice and occasionally a poetic suicide note. Your clan is your identity. It's your reputation. It's your safety net and your trap. Every action you take reflects not just on you, but on your parents, your siblings, your great-uncle who once served tea to a shogun. If you dishonor yourself, you dishonor them, and not just temporarily, forever. There is no statute of limitations on shame in feudal Japan. Let's say you're a samurai. You wake up, bow to your household shrine, and spend the day in service training, guarding, maybe writing a very restrained poem about chrysanthemums and death. You are always representing your clan. Always. Your handwriting, a reflection of your lineage, your posture, your father's pride, your sword, the honor of generations sharpened daily. One misstep, one inappropriate glance, one missed bow, one badly timed sneeze, and the consequences don't just land on you. They land on everyone. Your cousin in another province might find himself passed over for a promotion. Your brother might be excluded from a strategic marriage. Your sister might be politely uninvited from a tea ceremony. It's not punishment. It's correction. Like pruning a bonsai, quiet, deliberate, and deeply permanent. Let's say you're not samurai, maybe a merchant with a little money. Still doesn't matter. You can't rise above your class, but you can fall. And your clan will fall with you. You've got a brother-in-law trying to marry up into a minor noble family. Better hope you don't get caught selling counterfeit silk or arguing too loudly with a customer. One stain on the family name and everything collapses like a straw roof in typhoon season. Even something as small as gossip can ripple outward. Let's say your teenage daughter is seen walking with a boy at dusk, unchaperoned. The entire neighborhood draws its conclusions. Those conclusions become rumors. Those rumors become decisions. And suddenly your eldest son's wedding is mysteriously delayed, and the family who used to send you pickled plums now avoids eye contact. You don't get to be an individual here. You are a thread in a tightly woven tapestry. Pull one thread wrong and the whole thing warps. This is why discretion is not just admired, it's demanded. Why apologies are written in poetry. Why weddings are arranged by elders. Why everything feels so formal. Because one wrong moment could undo decades of family planning. Even birth order matters. The first son inherits. The second son serves. The third might join a monastery or become a wandering scholar unless the family needs him to marry someone for political advantage. Daughters are married off strategically like carefully placed stones in a game of Go. You don't ask why. You bow. And what if you want something different? You don't. Let's imagine you've developed a real passion for calligraphy. You dream of opening a scroll shop. That's cute. Unfortunately, your family raises horses. Your grandfather raised horses. Your father raises horses. So guess what? You raise horses. Wanting something else is selfish, it's disruptive, it suggests that your family's trade, your family's legacy isn't good enough for you. Now imagine your secret dream leaks out. A neighbor overhears you sketching scroll designs by lantern light. A cousin finds your ink brushes hidden behind the stable. Suddenly, your father stops speaking at dinner. Your uncle mutters something about forgetting where you came from. Your marriage proposal disappears. Just like that, your little dream has become a clan-wide embarrassment. Historians still debate whether this rigidity kept society stable or simply prevented innovation. Was it honor, or just highly structured peer pressure in very fancy robes? Even positive attention can backfire. Let's say you compose a poem so beautiful that it makes the local governor weep. Great right, not always. Now, the clan's name is associated with you. And with attention comes scrutiny. The governor might want to meet your family. Your family might not be ready. Suddenly, your mother is stressed about her hemline, your father's embarrassed about his handwriting, and your siblings are annoyed that you are now the poetic one. You didn't just write a poem. You started a wildfire. Even scandals you had nothing to do with can land on your shoulders. Maybe your cousin got drunk and insulted the tax collector's wife. You weren't even there. But guess what? You're related. So, you get a demotion, or a reprimand, or simply the cold shoulder at temple, because the misdeeds of one are the burden of all. It works both ways. If someone in your clan achieves greatness, earns a title, impresses a lord, survives a duel, you benefit. Slightly, indirectly, quietly. Your name gains weight. Your bows are returned more deeply. Your children might receive better marriage offers. But you don't celebrate it. That would be prideful. And pride is a dangerous luxury. Want to change clans? Good luck. You'd have to be adopted or granted special permission from a powerful lord. Maybe you save someone's life. Maybe you donate a ridiculous amount of rice. Maybe the stars align and your talent is so undeniable that the hierarchy allows you to rise a fraction. But that's rare, very rare. So you stay where you are, you play your part, you bow when expected. You apologize for your brother's rudeness. You marry who you're told. You raise your children to do the same. And if you succeed, if you live a quiet life, if you die without shame, maybe, just maybe, your name will be remembered in the household scroll. Read aloud once a year during ancestor veneration. Your bowl will be placed at the altar. Incense will curl around your memory like smoke clinging to a pine branch. And that in feudal Japan is as close as you get to immortality. So no, you wouldn't last a day. You'd start talking about personal growth. You'd ask to choose your career. You'd casually suggest maybe marrying for love or moving to a different village or, heaven forbid, starting a business. And your family would smile politely. Then have a long meeting, without you. And afterward, someone would explain very kindly that you're making everyone uncomfortable. So you'd stop. You'd bow. You'd say, of course. And you'd go back to raising horses. You might have survived the family dinners and the bowing and the tea ceremonies. You've learned to fold your sleeves, right, speak only when spoken to, and suppress your feelings with the elegance of a falling cherry blossom. But feudal Japan isn't done testing you, because now, just as you found a rhythm to life, nature arrives. And it is not polite. Let's talk weather. You've heard of typhoons. Now imagine living in a paper-walled house built on stilts during one. The wind arrives first, loud, angry, and uninvited. The rain comes sideways, soaking everything in minutes. Your roof lifts, your walls rattle, and the rice you spent 4 months nursing is now floating out of the field headed toward the village shrine, like it's on pilgrimage. You can try to rescue it, brace the door, hold down the thatch, but ultimately you're at the mercy of forces that don't care about your harvest. Then there are earthquakes. There's no warning. One moment you're sipping soup. The next the floor is rolling like the ocean, and you're trying to remember whether you're supposed to crawl under a table or just accept your fate. The ground splits. The beams groan. If you're lucky, the house survives. If not, well, rebuilding begins tomorrow. No insurance, no government aid, just you, your neighbors, some rope, and a whole lot of quiet despair. Volcanoes? Yes. Japan sits along the Ring of Fire, which sounds dramatic because it is. Entire regions have been buried in ash. Whole towns disappeared overnight. Lava doesn't care that you have to be at the market by sunrise. The mountain rumbles, people pray, and sometimes that's enough. Other times your home becomes a cautionary tale for future generations. Floods a regular visitor. Too much rain and the river swells, then spills. Your village becomes a muddy soup bowl. You try to move your belongings to higher shelves, but you only have so many shelves. The straw mats float the food spoils, and your chickens look at you like, this was avoidable. It wasn't. And then there's winter. Not a picturesque snowfall. Not the warm glow of firewood and stories by candlelight. Winter in feudal Japan is bone-deep cold. Your home has no insulation. Just paper walls, a fire basin, and prayers that frostbite isn't in fashion this year. You sleep beside your entire family for warmth, huddled like puppies, because no one survives winter alone. Your fingers go numb, your feet ache, you wake up and your breath makes clouds in the air. And that's inside. Blankets are thin. Firewood is scarce. You make do with straw, extra layers, and resilience. Bathing in winter becomes an exercise in spiritual strength or stubbornness. The water is so cold it feels like punishment. And yet you still clean yourself, because honor doesn't hibernate. Droughts are equally cruel. The sun scorches, the rice fields crack, the well runs low. You ration every drop. Your oxen start to look nervous. The village elders begin muttering about offerings to the gods. Maybe someone sacrifices a chicken. Maybe you start eyeing your neighbor's pond with dangerous curiosity. Nature in feudal Japan is beautiful, yes. But beauty here comes with sharp edges. You're surrounded by snow-capped mountains, tranquil forests, pristine rivers, and the constant knowledge that these things can turn on you at any moment. You learn to live with humility. You don't challenge nature, you endure it. You bow to it, you survive it if it lets you. Historians still debate how much of Japan's stoic cultural identity was shaped by its volatile geography. Was the ritualism the restraint? The layered etiquette a response to living in constant proximity to disaster? Or were those values rooted elsewhere and simply reinforced every time a temple fell during a storm? Either way, the result is clear. The environment is a character in your life, and it does not have a gentle arc. Even celebrations are weather dependent. A cherry blossom festival ruined by a sudden windstorm. That's just how it goes. A rice harvest cut short by early frost time to tighten your belts literally. There's no sense complaining. Complaining is what you do once. Enduring is what you do every year. Your architecture reflects this. Houses are built to sway during earthquakes. Roofs are angled steeply for snow. Homes are elevated to avoid floodwaters. Doors are sliding panels that can be easily removed when they warp from humidity. It's not luxury, it's logic. You don't build permanence in a land that reminds you daily how impermanent everything is. And yet in the middle of all this chaos, you still perform your duties. You still wear your layered robes. You still bow correctly. Because the storm might take your home, but it won't take your dignity. That's feudal Japan soaked to the skin, but still composed. When a disaster strike, earthquake, fire, flood, no one runs around shouting. There's no panic. People grab what they can, help the elderly, and begin chanting sutras. They walk calmly to safety if safety exists. And afterward, they rebuild. No fuss, no fanfare, just another day in a place where nothing is guaranteed except rice taxes and the possibility of something terrible before lunch. There's no emergency fund, no National Guard, just your clan, your neighbors, your willpower. You plant again, you sow again, you pray again. Maybe this year the gods will smile a little longer. Sometimes even the seasons blur into catastrophe. A summer so hot the rivers vanish. A spring so wet the roads become rivers. A winter so long that people start counting days by the number of frostbitten toes. The weather isn't just background. It's an antagonist. Still, you hang wind chimes in the summer. You write poems about the snow. You admire the way the light catches on dew, even if that dew is slowly turning into mold, because appreciating beauty, even fleeting beauty, is how you reclaim power in a world designed to take it from you. And you wouldn't last a day. You'd hear the wind rattling the walls and immediately Google storm preparedness. You'd ask why no one evacuates when the volcano smokes. You'd wonder aloud whether the fire basin should be upgraded for safety. And people would just nod, calmly, politely. Then they'd return to sweeping ash off the tatami mats with the same serenity they used to arrange flowers. Because here nature doesn't apologize, and neither do the people who survive it. You may have assumed that somewhere in this rigid, layered, exquisitely polite society, there's at least someone in charge who's truly free. Someone who can speak their mind, wear what they want, laugh out loud, and not worry about a misplaced sandal or a judgmental glance from their neighbor's aunt. Maybe the samurai, the daimyo, surely the shogun, the military dictator of Japan can do whatever he pleases. Absolutely not. In feudal Japan, power flows downhill and so does responsibility, and blame and stress. No one is really free here, not even the man with an entire army at his command. Let's start at the very bottom of the hill, the peasants. You know them well by now, mud rice, more mud, and a constant fear of taxes. Their lives are managed by the village headman who acts as a local liaison between the working class and the real authority. The headman might be respected, he might be hated, but he's not the top. He answers to the local samurai. Armed, disciplined, and always watching the samurai enforce the law, protect the land, and ensure taxes are collected on time. They're also the ones who decide whether your rice quota looks a little light this year, and whether that merits a stern warning or a public lesson in obedience. The samurai in turn answer to the daimyo. These are powerful feudal lords who control entire provinces. They have castles, retainers, banners, and egos large enough to justify their own family crests. A daimyo commands multiple samurai clans, collects vast amounts of rice and land tax, and wages wars with neighboring lords when the political tension simmers a little too long. But even they are not at the top. Hovering over the daimyo is the shogun, the military ruler of all Japan. The shogun doesn't just manage the army, he is the state. He decides which daimyo gets to expand their castle, who marries whom, and when a rebellion must be snuffed out before it gets too poetic. The shogun has the final say on law, war, and rice policy. He also sleeps with one eye open, because even he, powerful as he may be, is not untouchable. He must constantly balance loyalty among the daimyo, many of whom are just biding their time until they can replace him. If the shogun seems weak, someone will exploit it. If he seems too strong, he risks uniting his enemies. Every edict, every alliance, every marriage proposal must be calculated like a game of Go with daggers. And above him, the emperor. The emperor is complicated. Technically, he outranks the shogun. He is the son of heaven descended from the sun goddess Amaterasu, which is an excellent resume booster. But in practice, he holds little to no political power. He resides in Kyoto, surrounded by courtiers, poets, and ceremonial duties. He names eras, he writes poems, he oversees rituals, but ruling, that's someone else's job now. He is revered but politically irrelevant. He's like a very well-dressed ghost, everyone honors him, no one listens to him. The shogun rules but through the emperor's shadow, a delicate arrangement much like everything else in Japan at the time. So what does this mean for everyday life? It means that no matter who you are, there's always someone above you. Always someone to impress, always someone to fear, and always someone waiting for you to trip so they can either take your place or at least enjoy the spectacle. If you're a peasant and you complain about the headman, you get fined or exiled or worse, ignored. If you're a samurai and you disappoint your daimyo, you're offered a blade and a quiet room. If you're a daimyo and the shogun suspects you're getting a little too successful, suddenly your castle is under inspection, your messengers intercepted, your rice tax doubled. Even the shogun must watch his back. Literally. Poison is a real possibility. So are coups, or whispers from ambitious cousins, or the sudden disappearance of loyal advisors who weren't quite loyal enough. The shogun rules Japan, but only as long as Japan agrees to let him. And through all of this, there is no room for complaint. Orders are not questioned. Obedience is not optional. Disagreement is not considered spirited debate. It's considered sedition, or worse, impudence. And impudence doesn't get you demoted. It gets you dematerialized. Historians still debate whether this tightly controlled hierarchy kept Japan stable or merely repressed its people into exquisite, quiet desperation. Some argue it allowed for centuries of peace and cultural development. Others suggest it was a pressure cooker with the lid bolted down by 1,000 years of etiquette. But regardless of interpretation, one truth remains: no one escapes the system. Even the artisan who carves elegant hairpins must answer to the guildmaster. Even the monk who has renounced the world must still obey his temple's hierarchy. Even the geisha trained to entertain the elite with wit music and conversation must follow strict rules about where, when, and how she may speak. Power here is not a ladder, it's a grid. Everyone is tied to everyone else, and if you tug one string too hard, the whole net tightens. There are no grassroots uprisings, no revolutionary manifestos. If someone challenges authority, it's usually from within the system. A daimyo outmaneuvers the shogun. A samurai stages a poetic protest by withdrawing into monkhood. A peasant mostly prays for a good harvest and tries not to look directly at the tax collector. But maybe you're different. Maybe you think you can change things. You arrive in this world, see the structure, and decide, I'll just climb to the top. And at first, maybe you try. You bow deeper. You memorize the right seasonal metaphors. You make alliances. You speak softly and carry the right scroll. Then one day someone above you frowns. Not because you did anything wrong, just because you did something too well. And the next day, you're reassigned, or reprimanded, or you simply find yourself out of favor, your name no longer on the invitation list, your gifts no longer accepted. Because ambition here is a sword without a handle. It looks impressive, it cuts deep, but it's impossible to wield without bleeding. So no, you wouldn't last a day. You'd question the orders. You'd suggest a more efficient system. You'd ask, why can't the daimyo work together? You'd wonder aloud why the emperor isn't actually in charge, and everyone would smile, quietly, politely, and someone would hand you a broom, because even revolutionaries sweep the steps before they vanish. In feudal Japan, whether you got an education or any formal knowledge at all depended almost entirely on your social rank. And let's be clear from the start, education wasn't about personal growth, creativity, or fulfilling your potential. It was about preparing you to perform the exact role that society had locked you into from the moment you opened your newborn eyes and failed your first etiquette test by crying too loudly. If you're a peasant, your education starts early and ends quickly. Your first textbook is a hoe. Your first lesson, how not to drop it. You learn to wake before sunrise, how to plant rice without drowning, how to carry water without spilling it, and how to bow just deeply enough that it's respectful but not so low you tip over into the mud. You learn to keep your mouth shut, your fingers clean, and your emotions folded away like the tattered headcloth you wear to keep the sun off your scalp. There are no classrooms, no pencils, no reading circles. Your classroom is the field, your teacher is hunger, your homework is survival. Your parents might teach you a few things, seasonal rituals, basic prayers, maybe a folk tale or two to keep you entertained on freezing winter nights when your breath fogs the inside of your house. But literacy, that's a distant luxury. Most peasants never learn to read or write. And honestly, why would they need to? The rice doesn't care if you can recite Confucius. The village headman won't accept a tax form written in poetry. And let's not forget the scrolls. Oh yes, the scrolls. The ones nailed to trees or posted on temple walls. They announce tax increases, new laws, upcoming festivals, and punishments. You can't read them. But you can stare at the brushstrokes and hope someone explains the important parts, like how many extra sacks of rice you owe this month, or whether whistling during dinner is now punishable by exile. If you're a girl in a peasant household, even less chance of formal learning. Your lessons are in the kitchen, at the well beside your mother, folding cloth and keeping the fire alive. You learn how to sew, how to cook, how to serve tea in a way that doesn't accidentally insult your future mother-in-law. If you're lucky, you might memorize a few poems or learn to write your name, but more often than not, your education is in quietness, patience, and doing things the way they've always been done. Now, if you're born into a merchant or artisan family, you get a few more privileges. Not because society respects you more. Remember, merchants are considered morally suspicious for making money without breaking their backs, but because literacy helps you keep records. You learn how to count, how to track debts, how to calculate how many pickled radishes equal a bolt of low-grade cotton. Reading and writing are taught not for enrichment but for practicality. You might not read the classics, but you will learn how to write a receipt. Still, education is mostly confined to what's useful. Calligraphy? Maybe if it helps impress a customer. Geography? Sure, if it tells you where to buy cheaper lacquerware. History only if it's relevant to the tea preferences of your more noble clients. Philosophy? Not unless your customers demand it, and even then probably best to fake it. But if you're a samurai, now things change. Samurai boys begin education early, reading, writing, calligraphy, Chinese classics, Japanese poetry, etiquette, swordsmanship, archery, horseback riding. The ability to recite an ancestor's accomplishments backwards in the correct pitch while balancing a tea tray in a windstorm. Education here isn't just about knowledge, it's about refinement. A samurai must be ready to serve to die, to quote the right verse at the right time, and to bow without letting his kimono wrinkle. This is discipline raised to the level of performance art. Their schooling often takes place in temple schools, private academies, or within the household under a strict tutor who probably hasn't smiled since the last emperor changed eras. Lessons are memorized. Mistakes are corrected quickly, sometimes with a firm word, sometimes with a stick. You learn early not just to answer questions, but to anticipate what the question should have been. Physical education is just as rigorous. You don't just swing a sword, you learn why you swing it, where the power comes from, how the wind affects your strike, how your opponent's posture reveals his intent. Then you apply those same principles to poetry, because in feudal Japan, poetry and swordplay are practically cousins. And the girls. If born into a samurai family, they also receive training especially in calligraphy etiquette, music, and household management. Some learn to fight especially in times of war when women might be called to defend the estate. But their education is filtered through a strict lens of obedience and grace. Their minds must be sharp, but never too sharp. Their calligraphy must be fluid, but not too bold. Their knowledge is expected to support a husband, raise sons, and maintain a household that can host a tea gathering without starting a scandal. Historians still debate how much agency samurai women had within this framework. Were they passive participants or quiet strategists, keeping their households and sometimes entire clans running from behind paper doors? Letters and diaries from the period suggest both were true. They were poets, managers, mothers, and in rare cases, warriors. But they were always watched, always judged. Education didn't free them, it just gave them more tools to navigate the same narrow corridor. Then we have the monks and scholars men who renounce worldly life in pursuit of spiritual or academic excellence. They study astronomy, medicine, history, philosophy, and theology. Their lives are dedicated to understanding the world or transcending it. But even they are not free from hierarchy. A scholar's rank determines what texts he can access. A monk's temple dictates what sutras he copies. Knowledge here is sacred, but it is also heavily guarded. And while monks may understand the stars and calculate lunar eclipses with bamboo instruments and shadows on sundials, their discoveries are rarely shared beyond temple walls. Knowledge is not public, it is preserved, passed down carefully, layered in metaphor and ritual. Like everything else in feudal Japan, it's beautiful, precise, and tightly controlled. Want to study for fun? That's funny. Learning is for purpose, for duty, for tradition. The idea of education as self-expression would make most elders faint into their sake cups. You don't learn to ask questions. You learn to answer them in exactly the way expected of you. So no, there are no school plays, No extracurricular clubs, no finding yourself semesters abroad. There is learning. And then there is performing what you've learned in the exact tone, format, and posture required. And you wouldn't last a day. You'd ask too many questions. You'd want to read the forbidden scrolls. You'd say things like, what if I studied both poetry and swordsmanship and the room would go silent? You'd doodle in the margins. You'd forget to bow before the instructor. You'd ask, but why? And someone would gently close your scroll, hand you a broom and say, for now, just sweep. Because in feudal Japan, knowledge is not for those who ask. It's for those who listen. You've bathed, dressed, bowed, worked, eaten, endured, and educated yourself carefully, selectively, and in complete silence. Surely now you have earned the right to unwind. Perhaps express yourself. Create something beautiful. At last a moment for art. Yes, but with consequences. Because in feudal Japan, culture is not a playground. It is a battlefield. And your weapons are teacups, fans, ink brushes, and flower stems. Let's start with something seemingly simple, arranging flowers. Ikebana, a delicate composition of branches and blossoms and a tall ceramic vase, right? No, it is a practice with rules older than your ancestors, with symbolism that demands years to master. You don't just put flowers in water. You place them one to represent heaven, one earth, one humanity. Each angle speaks, each stem bows to cosmic balance. If your willow branch leans too far left, you haven't just failed horticulture, you've disrespected the natural order of things. And people will notice. A poorly arranged flower is not just tacky, it's revealing. It says your soul is off kilter, your home unrefined, your ancestors embarrassed. Let's try tea instead. The chanoyu, or tea ceremony, appears simple. You enter a small room, you're handed a bowl of powdered green tea, you drink. But every second is scripted, every motion choreographed. The guest bows before entering. The host bows lower. The cup is turned not once, but twice. The water is poured at a temperature that is spiritually optimal. You're not just sipping. You're participating in centuries of sacred ritual. Say you laugh, or slurp too loud, or wipe the bowl before handing it back. That's not quirky. That's a character flaw. In some schools of tea, it's practically an accusation. Not because the tea is offended, but because the person hosting is. You've just ruined not the drink, but the entire atmosphere. The carefully maintained spiritual equilibrium. The what? Now you're thinking, okay, but what if I just write a poem? Excellent. Poetry is revered. Haiku, tanka, renku, these forms are elegant, structured, and essential to aristocratic communication. But again, rules. You don't just write the moon is pretty tonight. You write moonlight on tatami. A sparrow's cry breaks the still old tea warms the chill. See seasonal imagery. Nature metaphor. Emotion, yes, but veiled. Controlled. Impersonal. A good poem reveals your soul. A great poem reveals it indirectly through fog and falling petals. Write something too passionate. You lack refinement. Too abstract, you're pretentious. Too clever, you're mocking the form. And suddenly, no one's inviting you to the next moon viewing gathering. You laugh. But moon viewing is serious business. Entire festivals are devoted to it. People sit quietly sipping sake, admiring the full moon, composing poems that will be shared, judged, and if you're lucky, admired. If you're unlucky, someone might read yours aloud, squint and say nothing. Let's try calligraphy. Surely writing beautiful characters with a brush is safe. It is not. Calligraphy or shodo is considered the mirror of your spirit. The balance of the characters, the pressure of the stroke, the rhythm of your ink. It all reflects your inner discipline. Wobbly lines suggest laziness. Overstated flourishes suggest arrogance. Sloppy kanji, emotional instability. You can't just write. You must embody the character, literally. Art is judged not by creativity, but by harmony, by adherence to centuries of aesthetic principle. Wabi-sabi, the beauty of impermanence. Ma, the space between things. Yugen, subtle hidden depth. You must be quiet, poised, and vaguely mystical at all times, even if you're just drawing a pine tree. Let's say you want to paint. Perhaps a scroll, maybe a fan, black ink on silk, your subject a mountain. But not just any mountain. A mountain must be symbolic. Its peaks softened by mist, its edges softened by contemplation. You don't just paint what you see. You paint what you feel, but only the appropriate feelings. Melancholy, reverence, fleeting joy, nothing loud, nothing obvious, nothing personal. Because in this world, beauty is not meant to express your individuality. It's meant to reinforce the collective aesthetic. Culture is about restraint, not release. Historians still debate whether these rigid cultural standards were meant to elevate society or control it. Were the arts refined tools of emotional communication, or were they elegant muzzles meant to teach the illusion of self-expression while reinforcing the existing social order? Let's say you compose music. You play the koto or the shamisen. There's a melody, there's a rhythm, but the emotion must be subtle. No pounding drums, no dramatic crescendos. The sound of a single note sustained at the right moment can move a person to tears. The rest is considered noise. Even performance is codified. No theater, for example, is a slow, haunting blend of chant, gesture, and mask. It moves at the pace of incense smoke. Every actor trains for decades. Every performance is ritual. The audience doesn't cheer. They sit in reverent silence, absorbing the gravity of a ghost, lamenting her unfulfilled duty in 14 syllables. So you dear time traveler might find all this stifling? You might look at the perfect arrangement of a tea room, the scroll, the flowers, the ash in the brazier, and want to add a splash of color. A personal touch, a joke, a story, a song. And that would be your undoing, because you'd paint outside the lines. You'd serve tea with enthusiasm. You'd write a poem that says too much. You'd play a tune that actually wants to be heard, and someone would quietly cough, and someone else would slowly lower their fan, and someone would say, perhaps, this person is better suited to other pursuits. Because in feudal Japan, culture isn't for relaxing. It's for revealing your discipline, your devotion, your understanding of your place in the cosmos. And if you use art to show who you really are, you wouldn't last a day. Not because your painting is bad, but because it's too loud, too bright, too... You've made it through almost everything feudal Japan can throw at you: mud, rice, silence, tea, the occasional polite death suggestion. You've bent your back, lowered your voice, endured your clothing, arranged your flowers, and hidden your opinions under 3 layers of metaphor. You've survived the hierarchy, the elements, and the poetry critiques. And yet, you're still here. But here's the twist. You're not supposed to be, because in truth, this entire world, the world of feudal Japan, isn't made to accommodate someone like you. Someone modern. Someone used to being asked how they feel, what they want, or what they dream about when the world is quiet. Feudal Japan is not a place for dreams. It's a place for duty. It's a place where your role is given to you, not chosen, not earned, just assigned. You're born with a name, a family, a class, and a set of responsibilities that wrap around you like layers of kimono. The better you wear them, the more you are praised. The more you chafe, the more you are corrected. And correction here is rarely loud, but always final. You may think, but what if I followed all the rules? You could, for a while. You could memorize the etiquette, learn the proper folds, rehearse the right seasonal metaphors. You could work the fields without complaint, serve tea without sloshing, write poetry that bows to tradition, and die in the exact posture expected of you. But what would be left? What part of you survives in a world that doesn't want you to survive as yourself? In this society, individualism is not just frowned upon, it's a red flag. Expressing your desires, your grief, your joy, or your rage in unapproved ways is not liberating. It's terrifying. It draws attention. It invites scrutiny. It risks everything, not just for you, but for your entire family. And so you don't. You bow. You say thank you when you're handed less than what you need. You say nothing when you're handed more than you deserve. You look at the cherry blossom and admire its beauty and say nothing about the part of you that longs to climb the tree instead of just writing a poem about it. This is why so many people, peasants, merchants, samurai wives, wandering monks, carried secret sadness, the kind that folds itself neatly into a haiku, that slips between the cracks of a well-kept house, that lingers in the steam of a morning bath, in the hush of falling snow, in the long pause before someone answers a question that wasn't quite safe to ask. Historians still debate whether life in feudal Japan was truly beautiful or merely beautifully performed. Was it elegant restraint or cultural imprisonment? Was it spiritual discipline or societal claustrophobia dressed in silk? The truth is probably both, because for all its cruelty, this world also creates some of the most breathtaking art, philosophy, and architecture the world has ever seen. The tea rooms, the temples, the lantern-lit paths between bamboo groves, the sound of the wind through paper screens, the way a bow could mean 100 different things, depending on how deeply it bent. It wasn't just survival, it was mastery. It was taking chaos, natural, emotional, political, and turning it into ritual. But mastery comes at a price. And that price is you, your voice, your freedom, your urge to step outside the frame. So no, you wouldn't last a day. Not because you're soft. Not because you're weak. But because you're still carrying something dangerous in this world. A sense of self. You try for a while. You try to belong. You'd memorize the rules. You'd learn to nod instead of speak. You'd wear the right robe, use the right ink, tell the right stories. And one day you'd say something. Too loud. Too honest, too new. Maybe you'd ask why the system works the way it does. Maybe you'd ask why a woman with 3 sons still has to bow to a boy with a sword he barely knows how to carry. Maybe you'd write a poem that doesn't mention the moon. Maybe you'd laugh at the wrong moment, cry at the wrong ceremony, sneeze during the tea ceremony, or compliment someone without referencing nature. And that's it. Someone would look at you, a long, slow look, and the room would go quiet, not because they hate you, but because you've become unpredictable, and unpredictability is the greatest threat of all, because it makes people remember they're still alive, that they still want, that they still feel things beyond what's allowed. And feudal Japan is not made for wanting. It's made for enduring. It's made for disappearing gracefully into your role. So here we are. The curtain falls, the moon sets, the ink dries, and maybe, just maybe you take a deep breath and whisper to yourself, thank goodness that was just a dream. Because in a world as quiet and beautiful as this one, even breathing too loudly might have been your last mistake. And now, let it all fade. Let the rules slip away. Let the bows straighten. Let the tea grow cold and the lanterns dim. Let the masks come off and the sandals untie. Let the temple bells echo in the distance. Let the snow fall on the roof. You no longer have to rebuild. Let the silence mean rest, not repression. Let the rituals melt into stillness. Let the stillness become sleep. And as the cherry blossoms drift gently into the river of your mind, let yourself go with them. You made it. You survived a world designed not to let you. And now it's time to dream in your own